It is day one of building clips, ScreenLink clips, for my collaboration with the Contraption King, based around the idea of centrifugal force. So this is the first clip, and this is an idea that I had a couple days ago, prompted by the theme of centrifugal force. And actually it was prompted by one of the clips that Zane made and shared with me, and then I said, I don't really have an idea for what you could do with that, but that did give me an idea for something I could do for one of my clips. So this is that idea. I decided to start with it because it's the one I'm kind of excited about at the moment. The idea is you've got two arms with tracks on them that can swing back and forth. Everything's symmetrical. The other one does just the same thing. And the idea is when these spin, the whole platform spins, they will sort of fly outwards. They will swing outwards, and you can see that when I spin it around really quickly. Now, it's hard to do with one hand, but the real magic comes in when the platform stops rotating suddenly, and because these tracks are outward, they've swung outward, when everything stops, they swing. So both of them will do that at the same time, causing them to both swing inward and magnetize. So I wish I could show you, because it's pretty cool. I've gotten it to work a couple of times, but it's not nearly reliable enough yet, and it kind of requires two hands. But the idea is, classic setup for a machine trick. Something happens in position 1, and then the motion of the trick occurs, and then something happens in position 2. So ball is going to roll across the tracks when they're in this position, and there's going to be some filler track in the middle. This has to be cut down to size tomorrow to fit this gap. And then it's going to fall out of the way when they swing outward, so it'll just be, held by some little pins or something. So when the tracks fly outwards, it won't be supported anymore. It'll fall by itself. And then, it'll stop rotating. These will come together and meet. And then the ball, hopefully, probably, the same ball, will roll over these tracks in this position, and that will be the trick. So this is approximately medium complexity for this ScreenLink. At the moment, that's how I'm picturing it. Like with any ScreenLink, it's usually customary to go from easier to harder, or at least complex to most complex. So this is somewhere in the middle, I would say. But, it kind of all depends on how it ends up at the end, because a lot of the connections might make it longer or more complex or more intricate in other ways. So we'll just see. But so far it's coming along nicely, and let's see how things go tomorrow. It is day 2 of this clip, and a couple of things are done now. So the first is that the track in the center connecting the two swinging tracks is complete. It's got these little tabs on either end. They're made out of clear plastic, and that's just there to hold the track in place when it's in this initial position. Because without those tabs, it would just fall down. And in fact, that is what it does when the tracks swing outward, because the tabs don't contact the tracks anymore. The second thing, the more major thing, the thing that took most of the time today, is installing the system that gets the entire board to spin. So underneath here, you can see that there are a bunch of strings wrapped around the base, and they're not all pulling the platform to rotate it. Some of these strings are here to actually wind up to stop the platform. So there's one string that unwinds and one string that winds, basically. And also, because the string has to pull a very large distance, it's actually a larger distance than the height of the table. So I can't just have I can't just affix and attach a weight to the string and have it pull, because it would just hit the ground before it rotates enough. So I have this pulley system that basically, in effect, doubles the height of the table. So it's actually set up right now to do a test. Obviously, like I said, this took most of the day to install the wrapping and unwrapping system. And that's mostly because it takes forever to perfectly calibrate the weights and the string lengths. And here's a shock absorber here. I didn't really mention this. This is to stop it. Strangely enough, you would assume that the trick that I explained yesterday would work better if the platform spins really fast and then suddenly comes to a stop, right? Instead of slowing down. But strangely enough, that doesn't really work to slow it down, or it doesn't really work to immediately stop it. I mean, it's hard to do anyway, but it turns out it was actually working worse when I tried doing that. It actually works better when it's slowed down over a small distance. So that's what this shock absorber is for. So like I was going to say, it took forever to calibrate all the weights and all the strings and the length of the shock absorber and the amount of friction to put on the shock absorber and all the rest. So there's a chance this won't really work, but at the very least you'll get an idea of what it's supposed to do. So the way it's all released is this weight is holding the string right now. So I'm going to remove that, and let's just see how this works. Okay, well, very, very close. You saw them get really close there in the center. So that'll be just something I have to keep tweaking, and or just keep testing until I get the perfect take, right? Like sometimes that is truly what it's all about, is like, I don't know why it's not working. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. I'll just keep going until I get the right one. But yeah, that's where we are right now. And tomorrow, I'll probably end up doing more tweaking of the weights and stuff. But big thing to focus on is going to be the ball path system. So let's put these together. Come on. Come on. There we go. So the ball path system, obviously the first thing to do is make the ball roll across in the initial position. But now, once it's in this position, I wasn't originally planning on using the bottom track again, but there's actually the perfect amount of clearance under there for the ball to pass through. Whoop. Wait, what happened? Oh, there isn't. Maybe I'll use a different ball. I think it was because I added these blocks. Actually, it was enough room before I added the blocks. But anyway, I will figure out that. I'm considering using the bottom track, is what I'm getting at. I was originally just going to use the top two that magnetize, but, you know, it's there, and it does move, so to not use it a second time feels a bit like a missed opportunity, but we'll see how hard that ends up being. If that causes too many problems, I'll just not do it. But yeah, figuring out how exactly I'm gonna like get tracks in. Obviously, I need a lead-in track here to make the ball roll over a second time. So like, yeah, I don't know how I'm gonna get a track there because it can't be there before it starts spinning because obviously it's gonna hit this. Yeah, so it's gonna have to be there's definitely, unfortunately, gonna be some machine maintenance for this. Which, if you're unfamiliar with the term, it's basically just having the machine make itself, basically. Like, it has to install tracks or remove tracks or, like, move other machine elements around to make the machine work, which is a little less elegant, and I try to avoid it whenever possible, but not going to be possible for this one. Yeah. So we're basically probably less than halfway done, despite having the majority of the basic mechanism complete. There's just so much more to do with ball pathing and tracks and connections. It is day 3 of working on this clip, and we've got some pretty major news. The biggest update for today is that I've sort of changed how the entire ball pathing will work. So, originally, I was going to have the ball roll across in this initial position, and then roll onto some other track, and then the thing would go and spin, and then the tracks would rearrange into their secondary position, and then the ball would enter again, roll across the top, and then along the bottom. And I was saying yesterday how that would require a lot of machine maintenance, where I'd have to, insert a track to be basically the in ramp for the ball, And then there would have to be an out ramp for the ball on the other side, which would then have to get removed because then the whole thing would have to spin around and it would be in the way. And just all that ball pathing would have a lot of, secondary intricacies that distract from the actual trick. So I really spent a lot of time just sort of considering if there was a way around all of that. And the way that I came up with is to never have the ball actually leave the track. So instead of in the initial position, and we have the initial position right here, instead of having the ball roll all the way across and then off and go somewhere else, it just stays on the end of the track. So it rolls across the track and goes into this cup here. Then the whole thing goes. And then as these tracks swing towards the center and magnetize, that in and of itself ejects the ball from the cup and causes it to roll back across the platform, across the track from left to right. And then this little device is just like a ball sort of redirector. So that's what makes it go across the bottom. So it catches it and then makes it go the other way. So I actually have it all set up, like I said. So here's the very first thing that happens is the ball in the initial, or ball track in the initial position, ball rolls across the track and gets stuck in the cup. So just like that, very straightforward. So then, and the other thing that I spent a lot of time today doing is playing around with the weights and everything. And I finally got a weight orientation and everything that works. And I also had to tweak the shock absorber quite a bit. And I'll go into that after this test. So you can see how it works as it spins around. Pretty cool. Oh, the ball just fell off the table. So, yeah, this is one of the big things that I had to play with today, is turns out I was not having very much success with the shock absorber that I had made yesterday. This shock absorber now works way better. It's got a lot of friction. It's got 4 of these black pieces plus the initial yellow connector. And that's a lot of friction. And it's pulling it, a good 1.5 inches, I'd say. No, more like an 1.25 inches. I don't know. But it's this distance. So it's a pretty far distance to pull through, pretty significant friction. So it basically, in effect, it's actually decelerating over a shorter period of time than before. But the deceleration force is a lot stronger. So it's quicker to decelerate because the friction is greater. Anyway, and I think I actually, played around with the weight on the weight, the number of weights on the weight as well. So that's where we are now. The next thing to do is just connections, I think. So we still need a track that will need to be removed to lead in to the initial position. And then something that has to catch the ball as it exits. But that actually doesn't have to move out of the way because I'm planning on just having like a small, I don't think a tricks track slope would work here because it would throw off the weight balance, but some kind of light track to just be right here. And this wouldn't even have to move because this doesn't interfere with anything. This could just be on the board the whole time. And then whatever track is outside the board system, it could just be low enough that the board can spin on top of it. So that wouldn't actually need to be moved and shifted into place at all. But the one leading in will. That one is the one that will have some machine maintenance necessary. Unless I can, think of some genius way around it. And that's where we are now. So everything else it works by itself, right? I don't need to get the ball onto the track a second time. I don't need to get the ball to roll on the track. I don't need to get the ball. I don't need to build a track system to get the ball from the first track to the second track because I have this little redirector thing. It's all pretty much self-powered, as much as it can be. So, yeah, some pretty great progress today. It is day 4 of this clip, and it is done. Where we left off yesterday was that I had completely sort of changed my mind on how I was doing the pathing system, where the ball would go across and then back underneath. I decided to just keep the ball on the track instead of having it go off to the side and then, do other track paths that would have to be removed and all that. And I said that I would still have to make one track leading in that gets removed somehow, which is this. It's now been built. And that whatever the system is to catch the ball on the outside could just be low enough that the board can spin around it. And again, that's this right here. It's been built. So it's actually, for the most part, set up, aside from this, which is very precarious. It's like a very, very, what's the word? Fragile, I guess. It doesn't take a lot of movement for this to get, this is supposed to go under here. And like even just vibrations on the table will cause that to go. Like I just tapped the table like way over here and that went, which won't be a problem because it's literally the first thing that happens in the clip. I just have to, be careful walking around to turn on the camera and stuff. That's not a problem. So anyway, the fun thing is this here, which I really like. So this part, the front, is low enough that the board can spin around it. But the dominoes that are kind of funneling the ball are not low enough to fit under, but they don't have to because the board doesn't spin that far. The board doesn't reach. I just thought that was a fun little thing. The other thing that I added is, of course, the method for releasing the board. So this is a compression rod release. The red rod is just pinned up against the side of the board, and then you pull on the string and the lever moves out of the way and the board spins. So what I'm proud of with this trick is like reducing the number of extraneous steps. So we talked about this a lot last time about removing all of the necessary connections that were going to happen, that were initially planned on needing to happen outside of the board, right? Like all those track systems of getting the ball across, and then it would leave the board and roll on some more tracks, and then enter the board again and go on some more tracks, and then go across the bottom and then enter some more tracks. It was just too much. So I'm proud of the fact that I was able to eliminate, all of that except just this one, which is, no big deal. Yeah, and also, I wanted to make sure that when this works, you're watching the right thing, because I considered making the ball, like the white, the ball that, or I guess I haven't updated you on this. The ball that is now going through the whole thing, the ball that is doing the whole trick is this ball now, the eyeball. It used to be a yellow smiley, but it turns out Zane doesn't have one of those. So it didn't matter before I realized that this ball would actually be exiting the clip. I thought maybe a different ball would exit the clip, in which case I could use whatever ball I wanted, but this is going to be the transition, so I do have to find something that Zane also has. Doesn't matter. It's the same type of ball, so it's just a matter of looks. So this is the ball now. And anyway, I thought about having the ball, when it gets to this side of the track, actually cause the board to rotate, so like maybe it would hit a lever or something, which would do something. But it's a light ball, first of all. And also, whatever lever that I put on here would have to be mounted on the board itself, which would be a little bit confusing when it starts spinning, because it would be non-symmetrical. And it would be very difficult to have like an outside of the board connection that would work. So that seemed probably not super practical. And I was going to have to do some kind of path splitting thing where the ball rolling into the cup is just a dead end. It doesn't actually cause anything. And then the thing that actually causes the board to happen would be a split off from way earlier, probably with the track tilting. But the concern was, I want you to watch this. I want people to watch this ball rolling across here, and not this marble rolling down, because this is just a connection. It's very boring, very plain, but it is a moving object, and sometimes, as we know from other machines that are much more confusing with their pathing, people just watch the moving object. And if you're not careful about making sure people are watching the right thing, people will get confused. So I was worried that if you had two things moving at once, it would be confusing. But I think I managed to make it so that the timing is, it makes it less confusing, because this ball gets into the cup almost at the same time that this ball starts moving. There's a little bit of an overlap, but you're not watching this ball when it starts moving. You're watching this ball go into the cup, which is all I want. That's all I care about. And then once this stops moving, your eye will be directed towards the only other thing in the frame that's moving, which is this ball here, which then rolls down and then causes the whole board to spin. And from there, you're just watching the board and the ball, which is good. I was worried that, in summary, I was worried that a split off this early would cause people to not watch this ball and then be confused about where this ball went, and then basically they'd miss out on the first entire part of the trick. So I don't think it'll be a problem, but it was something that was on my mind. But that's basically it. We're ready to test this trick, and I don't think it'll take too long to get it to work. It is day one of the next clip for the centrifugal force tricks screen link. And this one looks, on the surface, pretty similar to the last one. It's a spinning board that's pulled by a weight, and it's released with the same mechanism. In fact, when I took the other trick apart, I didn't even take it down all the way. I kept all this stuff here because I figured it might be useful for this next trick that I have in mind. Now, they're not all going to look like this. I do want to have some more variety with the kinds of tricks that I make, but these two kind of use the same basic setup. So the idea for this one is involving gears. I knew that going into the screen link, I wanted to do something with centrifugal force plus gears, and maybe there will be more, but this is the one that I came up with, the first one. And the idea is you've got these weights on these gears that can slide along like this. And the idea is, as the board spins, the weights are forced to the outside. And then when the board comes to a stop, that force, I guess the, objects in motion stay in motion type force, that force causes the weights to then keep moving, which then rotates the gear system. So, once they're forced to the outside like this, they're forced to the outside, they will keep moving along with the rotation, which causes all three to rotate. And then there's going to be something on this middle gear, probably a track, that rotates as a result. So I have it set up right now, so let's reset. So they start with the weights in the middle or towards the center. And then here's the basic motion that I'm playing with. So I think that worked. It looked a little bit weird. It wasn't completely perfect. I'd have to go investigate. But that's the basic idea, the generic idea. So you can tell that once the board stopped, they started rotating. All the gears started going. So what I do want to try to do, potentially, is actually do this as a double staged type thing. So I want to stop the board halfway through the rotation and then start it up again. So I want to stop it halfway through, release it, and then it continues to do two different stages. Because this motion can be repeated, right? So if they start in the center like this, and then the board spins, so they're forced to the outside, and then when the board stops rotating, they carry on. But if you stop them here again, that's right back to where you started. So then you could repeat that same motion a second time. They start spinning, so the board starts spinning, so they're forced to the outside. And then when the board stops spinning, they rotate back to the center. I mean, theoretically, this could be done over and over and over again, infinity. But I think doing it twice is a cool way to demonstrate that idea. So maybe if I can figure out, first of all, how to stop the board and then get the board to start going again, that might be the easy part, actually, because the harder part is figuring out what is going on in the center and figuring out how to make. It's probably going to be a track, like I said, but if the track rotates 180 degrees each time, if you repeat this motion twice, it's just going back to where it started. So that kind of defeats the purpose if everything just kind of resets itself. So there has to be a purpose to it rotating 180 degrees and then rotating back and somehow having a different result the second time. It's going to be complicated to figure out the logistics of it, but I think I've got some ideas, and everything seems to be working really well at this point. The other very difficult part was figuring out how to make sure that these gears would stay as level as possible, because the whole point is that they are unbalanced. There is a heavier weight on one side. It couldn't work if that wasn't the case. So I was worried that these would really have trouble staying level, and they need to rotate completely flat or else they'll unmesh. And it's hard to see, but the way I did it is by having this entire width, this entire height here constrain the motion, so that's what's holding it in place. The actual rod rotates with the gear as opposed to the gear rotating separately. So that means as long as you keep the rod perfectly up and down, perfectly vertical, there won't be any tilting. And it seems like there's pretty low friction, which is good. And you can still tell that it does kind of wobble a little bit based on where the weight is, but it's not so noticeable that it becomes a problem. It's just an aesthetic thing that I knew I had to figure out. So I'm happy. This is suitable. But yeah, that's kind of what I did today, and we'll be back tomorrow with another update. Okay, it is day 2 of the second clip for Centrifugal Force Tricks. And I'm in a bit of a weird position that I'm not used to being in, where I have the basic bare bones structure of the trick, but I still don't really know what the trick is. I guess I should rephrase that. I was talking yesterday about how I wasn't sure what was actually going to happen with the center gear, whether I was going to put a track on there or... I don't know. I still don't. But I did have an idea of what I wanted the actual concept to be, which is this whole thing with the weights and the way that they shift outward, and then the momentum causes them to circle back in, and then hopefully be able to repeat that whole motion. So the good news is I was able to get that to work. I was able to get that part to work with the repeat motion sort of thing. So you can tell that this here... Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself a little, but this here is a catcher for the weight. So basically it slides out. It's able to slide out. The idea is it basically can't move like this. It's locked in place side to side like this. So it can slide out. So it can slide out, and then as it rotates back, it slides under this, and then locks in again, and then can't move. So it repeats that twice. And what happens with the center gear is it rotates 180 and then 180 again in the same direction. And I just don't know what that does yet. I don't know what that will do. But I can show how the rest of the trick works. So before I do that, here's actually the method by which it stops halfway through the rotation. It does the board, not the gear in the middle, the board does 2 360-degree rotations. Okay, so the problem is, how do you stop it after the first rotation in a way that sort of decelerates it slowly without just crashing to a stop? And then, of course, how do you stop it the second time? Again, without having everything come crashing to a stop. So I solved that by having a shock absorber that pops up, and it pops up really quickly because of this rubber band, and there's a lever underneath the board right there, and I've got this little domino that's under the board that when it gets to that corner back there, it nudges the lever out of place, causing the stopper to spring up, and it catches on the next corner of the board, and it will compress the shock absorber, and that stops the board. And you'll see all this in a second. So I'm about to release it, and pay attention to what happens with these weights. So they will fly outward. So they'll go outward, and then they'll fly outward because of centrifugal force, and then when the board stops, they'll keep rotating and that rotates the whole thing in the center. That rotates the center gear. Okay, so here we go. Here's the first rotation. Okay, you can see how the shock absorber has compressed. You can see everything is right back to where it started. I mean, except the gear in the center has rotated 180 degrees. But the lock worked, the weight is locked in, and the weights are back where they started. And then, here's the second rotation. Same thing again. Okay. Actually, that time the lock didn't work perfectly. Should be that. But that's a minor problem. So there you go. I mean, aside from that one little thing, which hasn't happened before and is easily fixable, it works great, but it doesn't do anything yet. That's the problem. So I'm going to spend some time thinking about it, what I'm going to actually put on the second middle gear, and hopefully I'll have that figured out by tomorrow. It is day 3 of this clip, and whoa, look at all the progress we made. So, the first big news is that I finally figured out what I'm doing with the center. I talked a little bit about maybe putting a track in the middle, but I always knew there were problems with that, and I'm glad I found an alternative. So, the challenge was I had a gear in the center that would rotate 180 degrees, and then it would rotate 180 degrees the same direction. So, it would rotate in a circle, but it would go back to exactly where it started. And trying to come up with a way for that to be meaningful, for that to do anything, was really tough, because if it was a track, it would just go back to the first position. So why rotate at all? You basically had to come up with some answer to that question. And yeah, it just didn't seem viable. But luckily, something clicked in my head, and I came up with one method of doing it, which is basically having a ball get picked up and then carried back around. So something needs to go into position, pick something up, and then go back, right? So it needs to basically go get something and then bring it back. So that would make a full rotation necessary, because it would need to transport it, but it would also make the first part necessary to actually go pick the thing up. So that was a huge breakthrough, and this is basically exactly the most generic application of that formula. Is you have some kind of cup that the ball can go into that needs to rotate around, pick the ball up, and then rotate back around. So I've added this barricade here. So the cup actually has a hole in it. That's the most important thing to notice. And when the cup goes to this position to pick the ball up, the ball can't, of course, exit right away. So this guardrail blocks it from exiting until it spins around 180 degrees again, and then there's no more guardrail and it can roll out onto the track. Okay, so that answers that question of what is the center going to do. And then the rest of the things that I've added are just connections to make that work. So making the... let's see, what actually does this do? This is what triggers the this to get pulled down, because this is what pops up to stop the board from spinning after one rotation, but it needs to get removed to allow the board to spin for the second rotation. So that's all the connections to make that happen. So yeah, basically that's the big story. So we are ready to actually set it off, and you can see what I mean with the center trick, like the picking up the ball and then bringing it back around. So actually it's not entirely connected. Or is it? It is actually. Yeah, I think I'm just missing the very beginning, whatever comes in to hit this lever, and then I'm missing the end. So whatever happens after the ball exits the board. But if everything works, it all should be connected. So here we go. Here's the first part. Oh, that did not work at all. Something terrible happened there. Okay, that's a problem. Okay, oops. Well, I'll deal with that. And you'll see the update in episode 4. Update 4. Day 4. It is day 4, and we're done. I'm not going to be testing it tonight. I'll be putting that off until tomorrow, but everything is ready. The last couple of things I had to add from yesterday were the incoming track, which is now here, and that's what knocks off this domino to release the lever, and the outgoing track, which was a lot harder, and that is right here, going out this way. So once the ball gets to its secondary position, or once the board and the gears on the board get to their secondary position, the ball is sort of waiting in the cup, and then it rolls out of the cup, and it's going to bounce on the table, and then go into the track. So hopefully it works. Hopefully it works. First try. The reason I do that is because having anything here will be in the way when the board is rotating. You can see that the edge of the board fills that space. So I tried to do what I did last time. Hang on, something's caught now. It won't. I don't know why it won't rotate now. It's like stuck in this position for some reason. I'll figure that out. So it's just going to be kind of crooked now for the rest of the update. Whatever. In the last clip, what I did have a catching basin, sort of a catching platform that fit underneath the board as it was rotating, and that worked for that clip. But here, there's actually this red half domino underneath the board, which is actually what pushes on the lever to release the shock absorber lever over there. But anyway, since that is there, that makes the board, in effect, even lower to the surface of the table. And anything that I put underneath needs to be able to clear not only the board, but also that extra little extension. So that just put everything really, really low, and that made it basically impossible to fit any kind of catching basin underneath all of that, while also having it be sloped enough for it to roll off of the catching basin and then into a track that's also sloped to go off screen. So that didn't really pan out, although I did try. This is the sort of the remnants from my attempt at that. And the other problem with this, of course, is that once it's falling from such a height, that's a pretty decent drop, it's bouncing, right? It's going to bounce into the catch basin. So you either have to make the boundary, like the barrier on the side, really tall, or you have to make it absorb that bounce somehow. So I was trying both approaches, nothing was really working, and then I realized that there was an entirely other reason, this thing under here, that was going to nullify any attempt at that approach anyway. So I just switched gears and tried something new. So I was a bit hesitant to do the whole bounce approach, because I felt like, is that too much flair? Is that a little bit too fancy? Does that distract from the motion at all? Or is it better to just sort of have the thing happen, the trick actually happen, and then the ball just rolls cleanly off, and it's a very elegant sort of exit. Whereas here it's a little bit more fancy. It's a little bit it's a little bit So I felt like it's a fair trade-off, because this is kind of the only other way to do it. And yeah, it does seem to work all right. So yeah, tomorrow we test. I don't think it'll be too bad. Probably worse than the first clip, though. That one was really not bad at all. Couple dozen fails, I think, on that one. This one I might, maybe around the same number, but I will say probably more than the first. But still nothing too bad. We'll see. It is day one of a new centrifugal force trick. And this one is the first one where the centrifugal force is actually vertical, as opposed to something spinning on the table across the horizontal plane. There's something spinning vertically in a vertical plane. So sort of the difference between a merry-go-round and a Ferris wheel, basically. So this one came to be because I have these keychain zipline sort of badge holder things. You'd put it on your keychain, and then you'd have a set of keys, and it'll automatically return. It's like a key return thing, but it basically is this zip wire that just pulls and retracts the whole string and like sucks it in. It's kind of like an automatic return on a tape measure a little bit, but it's a little bit stronger, and it's just a string and not a tape measure. So that means I can do something like this, which is, if you haven't figured it out, it involves the string unwinding around the poles, and it goes really fast. So basically, because of the automatic retraction, it's constantly like eating the string, which means that it can kind of gain its own momentum. That's how it gains the speed. And through centrifugal force, the ball is able to stay in the cup. So this was kind of the root idea. It was just to sort of use these keychain retractor things to have it sort of spin somehow, and it would be attached to the box, and there would be a ball in the box. What I didn't know was the arrangement of the poles, and like how I didn't know whether they would change direction or whether it would always go clockwise or always go counterclockwise. I didn't know where like I said, where the poles would be, whether they would be in the same plane or whether they would be offset in the X direction, or I guess the Z direction, like upwards. Like, so this one is taller than this one. Didn't know that would be the case when I made this, when I first started. But yeah, let's do a demo. So right now, all that's going to happen, because all I've built today, well, we'll get to this in a sec, but all I've built today is just the basic movement of it. So it just kind of smashes into the ground over there, but I'll at least show a demo so you can sort of see what the motion is like. So that's pretty violent. And obviously the ball exited once it smashed into the table, but until that point, the ball stayed in the cup. That's the whole point. So the next step that I already kind of started and then it didn't work at all is something that catches the box. So I need something for it to land in, but it also can't bounce, so it needs to soak up that impact. And this is not going to be easy, I think. I'm going to probably end up doing most of this work tomorrow, but I tried making this, which was totally underkill, if that's a word. It doesn't work. It's not nearly enough. This did not soak up the impact nearly enough. The idea was it would be sort of a hinge, and this would hinge as the box smashed into the top part here. The two strings would get caught behind the poles so that, you know, it would basically land like this. Oh my God. I can't do this. Oh, and something fell off. Okay, never mind. It didn't work anyway. I was going to try to show you. But that didn't work, and I don't quite know what I'm going to do next, but I might try something with shock absorber or like a hook system. I don't know. We'll have to see. But yeah, tomorrow's the big task is going to be figuring out how to catch the box, because I think that'll be the biggest challenge of all, actually. Day 2 of this centrifugal force trick, and there's not a ton of progress to really show today because it was a lot of false starts, a lot of redesigns, a lot of not actually getting anything that works, but having a lot of stuff in the trash, basically. Not literally, but just stuff that didn't work. So I'll start with the final design, like what's actually currently built, which is this eye hook and this sort of peg, this metal rod. This actually was what I started with. I had this idea of using an eye hook in some way, and this did seem to work. Or no, I misspoke. So this was the original. It was supposed to sort of. This was just on a platform, and this is just like a command strip hook thing, and this was just on a platform, and the idea was that the eye hook would hook onto that, but it would just, you know, when it didn't fail for 300 other reasons, it would fail because it would land perfectly right here, you know, it would just hook on perfectly right there and bounce out because it's going 300 miles an hour. So I needed something longer that can soak up the impact, and so I figured if it slides onto a longer rod, it can slide on there, and then no matter how much it wiggles and bounces, it's never going to bounce all the way off. And that has been true. That has been an accurate guess. What hasn't worked, and here's where we get into sort of the trouble that I've been having today, is I started with just taping the eye hook directly onto the blue box using the double-sided tape, and that stayed on for a while. But when the first time that I actually tested it and it actually did work, it actually did land perfectly on here, it just ripped the eye hook right off. So I figured that wasn't that wasn't a fluke. Like, the only reason it stayed on for this long was because it actually hadn't worked yet. So if it were to work again, even if the tape was brand new, it would probably just do the same thing. So you can see now I have this piece of wood here that I've drilled the eye hook into, and that's been taped to the base. What I did originally was I had a larger piece of wood, because obviously the problem that I had was that there wasn't enough surface area keeping the eye hook attached to the box. So I figured, okay, I can maximize the surface area by screwing it into a piece of wood and taping the piece of wood. And the original was about the same size as the base of the box. The problem with that was that it added too much weight, which is crazy because that was like a couple of grams. That's literally all it was. But that made the difference, and that basically made the ball fall out as it was swinging around every single time. Basically what would happen, I'm not going to do this perfectly, but I'll wrap it around to show you the idea of what happened, is that the cup would come here, it would come off of this one, and it would come this way with the ball in it, again, and then just pretend the ball's in there. It would come this way, but because it was so heavy, it wouldn't actually like come around like this and then go under there. What it would do is it would just kind of go like this, and it would just come right across and then do like an immediate U-turn. And this was the motion, this immediate U-turn, that was the motion that, I don't know, somehow, even after looking at it in slow-mo, I don't really understand how, but that's the motion, this kind of immediate U-turn, that's what kicks the ball out. And it would just go flying across the room every single time. And that was because of the extra weight. So hopefully, I actually have not tested this, by sort of removing as much of the wood as possible, hopefully this is still enough surface area to keep the eye hook on the base, and it hopefully removes enough weight that it'll go back to behaving the way that it did before, where it would just, the ball would actually stay in the cup. So we'll have to see. But that'll be a job for tomorrow. I hope to finalize an actual catching mechanism tomorrow, and then we got to work on a release. And I have a feeling that'll be easier, but I don't really want to speak now because I thought catching the box would be trivial. I guess I don't know why I thought that, but I did not anticipate it being such a huge ordeal. I mean, it's been now basically 1.5 day project just to figure out how to catch the box. So yeah, hopefully the release won't be too hard. But yeah, the other thing is just after it, obviously this is a one ball path trick, so the ball rolls into the cup, does the zoopy whoopy, and then it lands and the ball rolls out. So I got to make the in track and the out track, but that's all at the end. That's all the stuff that won't take long. So yeah, that's today. Stay tuned for tomorrow. Day 3 of this centrifugal force trick, and it looks like I've done a lot, but it's a lot of pretty basic stuff. The clip is done. So yesterday we left off where I wasn't really sure how I was going to make the box flip the way that it used to work, because I still needed to add some kind of mechanism that would catch the box. And so I was playing around with this eye hook. And yeah, I think yesterday we left off where I was going to just wait until the next day to see if this would work. And it has worked. It didn't work initially. So a recap of what happened is basically it was too heavy to work. Without anything on there at all, it works great. I added the eye hook. It was too heavy, and it wasn't able to make it over this bar. So when I sort of cut down this wood part and trimmed all the sides off to make it as small as possible. That helped, but it still wasn't perfect, and I ended up actually needing to move these closer together. So this entire box ended up moving closer in towards this one, which is something I was nervous about doing because obviously when it's spinning around this pole, it can't hit this pole. But there was enough clearance, luckily, and so it works well now. So that was kind of the big update, is that finally figuring out a way to have the box get caught at the end while keeping the ball inside the cup, and just getting those two, finding some way of making both of those things happen was the big breakthrough, because everything after that was pretty basic. This is the release for it. It's just a small connects rod lock thing that just slides down, and then that hooks onto the eye hook, actually. So that's both the catch. The eye hook is both the catcher and part of the release. This is a track that leads in. I guess there is something to discuss here, which is that because of the way the thing spins, it it unwinds around 360 degrees. So there can't exactly be a track leading right into the cup, because it would just hit the track as it unwinds. So the track that leads in to actually put the ball in the cup, or box, same thing, cup, box, same thing. The track leading into the box either has to flip out of the way, or move out of the way, or slide, or rotate, or whatever, or the ball has to get thrown in or bounce in to the box somehow. And that's the approach that I decided to go with, because I think it's just a much less distracting way of doing it. So this is the lead-in track for the yellow ball. Rolls down, bounces into the box, which is behind the release. And then the timing from this ball, which is the transition ball. Ball rolls in, hits this lever to release this. It keeps going, and that's what releases this. And this is what releases the release mechanism. So then it's timed up so that the ball lands in the box. There's a beat, and then it gets released. Just enough so you can sort of catch your breath and understand, okay, ball is in the cup now, and then there it goes. As opposed to just being all one quick snappy thing where it's like ball goes in box and then it starts moving without you even being able to really process it. That's the idea. Hopefully there's enough time so it's two sort of separate things. But yeah, that's it. Hopefully it works. I'm about to start testing now. You can see I've cleaned up the table. But yeah, this was a relatively pain-free build, presuming that it works without too much effort. But yeah, 3 days, not too bad. All right, it is day one of the last big main idea type trick of centrifugal force tricks. And this one is the last one of mine in the video right before Zane's finale clip. So hopefully go out on a bang, right? Go out with a big one. Hopefully this one's really good. But at the moment, it's not. Not just because it isn't done, but because I actually have no idea if this is going to really turn out how I hoped. So I had this idea of doing something where I just basically liked the idea, the sort of the vague visual of centrifugal force plus pulleys, right? And I had this idea that there'd be some kind of complicated string path that gets modified somehow as things sort of telescope in and out. As they start small and as they grow, the whole string pattern starts to unfold, and I don't know. I didn't really have more of an idea beyond that. But sort of what I ended up coming up with is sort of this eight spoked design. Right now, obviously, there are only 7 because that's part of the idea, is to have one that's empty I'll get to it. And each of the points that slides outwards is a pulley point in itself, and it's kind of this it looks terrible because there are only 6 wheels. This is where it starts. This is where the string starts, and then it kind of goes around this 8-sided star shape, and then ends with this wheel. So the last point is this one here, and then it goes and winds around that. So the idea is that as all of these wheels expand, that pulls on the string and makes the string unwind this wheel, and this wheel is sort of just a stand-in at the moment, just to see if the concept itself works. And later that would be changed for something else, something else that gets pulled. But I'm not at all confident that this even will work at the moment. But let's backtrack even a little bit more than that. So this giant spinning wheel is a Lazy Susan that I bought from Target. And it came with a whole, base that spins and everything, but it isn't like a Lazy Susan is not made for Rube Goldberg machines, right? So it's not easy to make a Lazy Susan rotate unless you have something to wrap the string around. And you could try to wrap it around this and wrap it around this, but that's really hard to do, and it's sort of annoying to do. I know from experience from doing this in Pass the Pepper for the cake clip, where we had to wind ribbon around the very, very thin outside circle of a Lazy Susan, and it kept falling off, and that's the thing, is that when it falls off, it goes underneath, and then you have to unwind it all to wrap it back around again. It's a big pain. But I'm going to use the same base that I've been using for the other 2 spinning board clips, which is this nice thick base. So you can wrap a string around this really easily. It's hard to see because of the shadow, but it's really easy to wrap a string around that. So anyway, this is a new spinning platform that I just got, and I'm really excited to see how much I end up using it in the future. But so the other thing to mention is that this red ribbon is sort of just a temporary thing. I didn't have enough string left over, and the string has to be crazy long. It has to go and wind around all of these pulley points, but then also as it expands and all these pulley points go outwards, the string becomes even longer, and it's basically I don't even know the math behind it, but it's whatever the distance is between the 2 points, it's that times 8 or 7, right? So the length of the string is actually really long, and I didn't have a length of string long enough, or I didn't have enough string, so I did go to Michael's and buy more string, so I will use this probably for now. I was just sort of using the string or the ribbon as a stand-in yesterday to see if the concept would even work, and I'm confident enough in it that I'm going to continue, and I'm going to switch out the string, but not at all confident that I'm a little bit confident that it'll work. Enough to keep going, but yeah, I don't really... Because the thing is, it takes a lot of force. It has to spin really, really fast for these to even slide outward. And it also has to spin for a long time. It takes a really long time to get them to go for some reason. And what's worse than all of that is I don't even know if this is a good idea. I fundamentally don't even know if anyone is going to think this is cool, if anyone's going to understand what's going on, or if is this even a good idea at all? I don't even really believe that it is. So I'm in a bit of a time crunch, actually, because I have to finish this clip in only a couple of days, and if I don't do this, then I don't know what I'm gonna do. But I'm honestly not even that big a fan of this. I think it's too confusing even standing still, but like when it's rotating at 100 miles an hour, I just don't think anyone could really understand what's happening. Yeah, like I said, I don't even think anyone could understand what's happening if it were standing still, let alone going a million miles an hour. So I don't know, man. This might not turn out in the actual video, or at least it won't turn out like this. There might be a very very modified version of this. So this, what you're seeing right now, might be might not even look even remotely similar to what you end up seeing in the final video. I don't know, but we'll see. It is day 2 of this trick, and bad news, nothing here is usable. This whole thing is going to be taken apart right after I do this update, but I wanted to sort of talk about what happened and why. So the basic problem is that the idea I had doesn't work at a like fundamental level. It's not like something that can be saved with a couple of tweaks or even minor adjustments to the plan itself. It's a like the idea was fundamentally flawed. Like there are things that it like I assumed about how centrifugal force works and about how pulleys work and about like dimensions of things, like how long the string would need to be and for how long the string would need to pull and for how long the thing would need to rotate and just like where the and which pulleys have more tension on them than others. And it just, I made too many assumptions that and it's just fundamentally completely flawed. So there's no saving it. This is getting taken apart. However, today I spent the day trying to at least save what I've built and maybe convert it into some completely different idea. Because if you'll recall, yesterday I had one of these, I think it was an orange one, that was missing. It was just 7 different spokes. And I said I would explain why one was missing, and I never did. But basically the idea was, as the 7 pulley points expand in like the star shape that the string was forming, that would pull on the string. So they start compressed, and as they expand, that pulls on a string, and the string was going to lead through to the middle, and that was going to pull down on like some elevator shaft or something with a ball, and then by the time the ball gets to the bottom, the ball would be able to exit, and then the final missing spoke would be replaced with a track, and so the ball would exit on the track. And like I said, so this is a completely flawed idea that doesn't work in every way imaginable. So today I added the 4th orange spoke back in to make a complete circle of 8. And I put pulleys on all of the points just to sort of make everything symmetrical and just sort of see if I could come up with anything. Because at the end of the day, this is a shape trick. It's a trick based entirely on shape and like, you know, the star shape of the strings and like the 8-spoked thing with all the pulleys. Like it's very based on what it like looks like aesthetically. And so this is the purest form of that, is just a completely, I mean, well, I've changed it since with this thing, which we'll get to, but if you could imagine that all of the spokes were basically this, a sliding wheel. That was like the starting point. And I tried a couple of things with, you know, making, you know, just wrapping the string around them differently, or making certain ones heavier, or changing the way that the pulleys work, and so on. And here's one example of what I tried to do. So this one is heavier than this one, and you'll notice as I spin it, the heavier one makes its way to the outside eventually. Yeah, so it does kind of work, but first of all, that took a lot more force than I think I can manage. And it took a lot longer than I think I can manage. And like those things can be adjusted. Obviously, the more force you put in, the less time it will take. If it's spinning faster, it won't take as long. But the point is, like, this is pointless. But even more fundamental than that, like what I am running up against all the time with anything related to this sort of stuff, this spinning disc with pulleys, is that I can't figure out how to make it, like, do anything. Like, all of these motions are just motions. They're not actually tricks. Like, it's cool that the pulleys expand outward. I mean, maybe you don't think it's cool, but like, even in a, like, let's just pretend that you do, right? Let's pretend that you think this looks cool. I think it looks all right. It's definitely something that I can imagine being cool, but on its own, it doesn't actually. I don't know how to communicate this in a way that doesn't sound like I'm just complaining. It doesn't actually do anything. I don't know, like, if you so most chain reaction tricks are based on like a couple major concepts. It's like track tricks is all about moving tracks to a different position to allow different ball paths. You could do gear tricks where the gears rearrange themselves somehow and like create a gear chain that can then do something. And like anytime you move objects around, it's about what that allows you to do. If it's about moving tracks, it makes a path so that allows you to roll the ball. If it's gears, it aligns the gears into a chain to allow you to turn the gears. If it's, if it's dominoes, it like moves the dominoes into a place to allow you to topple the domino line. If it's platforms, it moves the platforms into place to allow you to bounce a ball over them. If it's pulley points, it moves the pulleys into this new position to allow you to... And that's the point. Nothing. It doesn't unlock anything. There's nothing that this does. It's just pulleys that move around. But like, what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do with that? Like what? And I can't even accurately convey to you how like completely like brain dead I get when I try to finish that sentence. Like nothing comes to mind. It is just complete emptiness in my brain when I try to think of what this could do. It doesn't do anything. So I don't know. I mean, like I said, this whole thing, like pretty much nothing. Like this is where I'm starting from. This is what I'm starting with next. Is just blank. I have an idea, but I don't know how to do it yet. I'll have to really think about it. But yeah, this whole thing, a complete waste of time. Okay, it is day one of building the last clip of Centrifugal Force tricks. Hopefully. Yeah, so take two, I guess. This is the second time I've tried to build the last clip of... I guess I should backtrack even more. The last real trick, like big main idea trick. So I have two clips left. The first is like an introduction clip. That's sort of a sign revealer introductory thing just to sort of set the stage and introduce the concept. But this is the last clip right before Zane's finale clip. So this is the last real big main idea clip. Anyway, I tried making one before. The idea completely failed. I had to scrap the entire thing. I couldn't even salvage any of it. And I just had to go with a completely different idea entirely. However, this idea rocks. This idea rules. It's real good. So the idea is that it's sort of inspired by like these sort of puzzle box things, where you have to like figure out push the secret button and like twist the secret knob and use the right keys to unlock the secret drawer and all this stuff. There are like these videos on YouTube of like people solving these puzzle boxes. And one of the gimmicks that's used semi-frequently is this idea of sort of locks or like latches or something that are on opposite sides, and you can't actually open both of them at the same time, because as soon as you like tilt the box in one direction, one of them will open, but the other will close. And like the only actual way to get... Because basically you need both of the latches to go outward. And there's really no way to do it by hand except by spinning it really fast and then centrifugal force will cause both of the latches to go outward and allow some secret thing to be unlocked. So that's kind of the idea, is that there's a ball that this is, it's stuck inside. It's not able to roll out because of these latches that kind of come in from the top and block it. But as it rolls, as soon as one of the latches disengages, another one comes in to lock it in again. So no matter what orientation, there's always something blocking the path, right? So the ball will never be able to roll out unless it builds up enough speed and centrifugal force forces all of the latches outward, and then the ball is able to roll out. So that's the idea. It starts out rolling, so it's this really long thing. I'll have to trim it down later, and like this board isn't taped at all. Like this is just a demo for the update. But I imagine the final trick will look something like this, vaguely. So the idea is it rolls down. It's like the classic time delay trick where there's like a really thin dowel rod that rolls, and then there's like a big wheel, and it looks really visual and slow because it rolls really slowly. But I'm not using it as a time delay, and I'm not using it as a visual delay trick. I don't want anybody to have to feel like they're waiting for this to happen. I want the trick to be pretty quick. But anyway, the idea is it rolls down, and as it starts rolling, it's slow, so the latches continue to block the path of the ball at every point along its rotation until it eventually builds up enough speed, and then all of the latches slowly start to not be able to come back to fill the gap. They get forced out to the outside due to centrifugal force, and then there are no latches in the way of the ball, and the ball is able to roll out. So I've actually set it up, even though nothing's taped, it does actually work if I can get it to start rolling, and hopefully it won't fall apart. But you can see all the latches are coming in to block the path, but eventually, there you go. So, yeah, close call there. It almost fell apart. So yeah, right now, the ball falls out like about halfway down the board, so I might change the slope so that it takes a little bit longer for that to happen, but I also, like I said, don't want it to be super slow. Like, I don't want this trick to be really slow. Like, that length of time is about perfect. Like, the amount of time it took just now for it to build up enough speed and for the ball to come out is about how long I want it to take. Like, enough that you get the idea, but you're never really waiting. So I got to figure that out. Maybe I'll see if I can find a shorter board or something that would work. I have these that are a little bit shorter, so maybe these would work. Yeah, so that's about where we're at. This is a great trick. I like the concept. It's got a very strong trick to it, a very strong motion, very, very visual. And the other thing that I really like, that I didn't actually mention when I was talking about the failed trick from before, that I didn't like about that trick, was that it was another horizontally spinning board thing. It was another, even though it was a circular board, it was another horizontal centrifugal force. Whereas here, it's a vertical centrifugal force. It's something spinning. It's Ferris wheel versus merry-go-round, basically. So I'm really happy about that. There's now an even balance. I have two horizontal spinning boards, and I have two vertical centrifugal force. One of them is not really a spinning disc. It's a flying box, but it's still vertical centrifugal force. And this is another vertical centrifugal force. So it's a good balance, and this trick looks visually very different from all the others. So it's great. I'm a bit sad that I couldn't figure out something to do with pulleys and centrifugal force. I'll keep it in my ideas list. I'll keep thinking of stuff, and maybe it'll make a return in another video. But for now, finishing up centrifugal force tricks, this is the perfect idea to round out the last main idea. Yeah. So I'm in a much better mood now than I was when I was working on that other thing. This is a great trick. It's going along smoothly. Yeah. Update again tomorrow, and hopefully we'll have mostly a completed trick. I'd like for this to be a 2-day build if possible. It is day 2 of the centrifugal lock trick. So yesterday I was saying that I thought I could do this in a 2-day window. Here we are. 2 days have passed and the trick is done. So there is some extra stuff here at the front, which we'll get to. It's at an angle, which is for a reason. But the big update is, like I said, the trick is done. So we left off yesterday where I wasn't totally sure about how long the board would be, about the length of the dowel rod, sort of I think even the elevation wasn't quite dialed in yet, and obviously all the connections are new. So let's start with the biggest thing, which is that the dowel rod was trimmed, so it's not just comically large. But the problem with that is that obviously now the front is way, way heavier, which I knew. I knew that would be a problem, and I had this exact fix in mind, and I'm very happy that it ended up working the way I expected it to. So basically there is a wheel on the end, and it's attached with a screw driven right through the hole of the Connex wheel. And then there's a pulley underneath, and there's just a rubber band wrapped around the wheels. And then this has a weight. Now the rubber band is not there because because it needs to be elastic or anything. It's just because it's a really small loop. It just needs to be a small loop. If there was such a thing as a small loop of string, that would have worked just as well. It just needed to be a smooth circle of something. So I couldn't have a string with a knot in it, which is why I used a rubber band. Rubber band works great. This is just here to keep everything weighted down on the back side, and it's done with the pulleys so that it's always down, pulling downwards. Anyway, I guess I could have just put the weights on the dowel itself, but again, part of what I was saying is, part of what I was struggling with was finding a way to make this as secure as possible without anything flexing. And I just needed to use screws for everything. So I guess if I had thought ahead, I could have just added weight to the dowel itself and made some, whatever. It's, it's cool. It's a cool little pulley thing. So you might be wondering, how does it actually start? I see this clothespin here, but what's up with that? What happens here? Well, this is the start clip. And I was thinking about how I was going to... Obviously, I knew I would have to reach in and do something to start the whole video. But it took me a little while to warm up to the idea of just basically reaching in and pushing the wheel along. More or less. I mean, I'm reaching in and undoing the clothespin, and that releases the wheel. Instead of making a machine arm or a lever release or something, and then I reach in and put a ball on a track, and then the ball rolls down and pulls off a domino and releases so on and so forth. I'm just going to reach in directly and release the wheel, which I think is kind of cool. So actually, hold on. I haven't explained this part yet, because yesterday I was talking about how this was going to be the finale, or like the last trick, before Zane's finale. Oh, just like a sign revealer. So I've changed my mind on that. This ended up being a little too simple, I think. It's basically, I still have to make a introductory clip, something that sort of sets the stage, or I don't have to anymore. This is it. But yesterday, I was in a mindset where I still had to make 2 clips. One had to be a complex one, and one had to be a simple one. And I still needed, a really simple centrifugal force concept for an introductory clip, something to really just set the stage and sort of, like I said, introduce you to the concept. And I didn't really have anything great for it, but then I was building this, and I was like, you know what? This isn't like the most groundbreaking, earth-shattering, knock your socks off type clip of all time. It's a pretty basic idea, but it is new, obviously, and it sets the stage well for what centrifugal force is. So why not turn this into the intro clip and then figure out some other complex thing to do for my final one? So I've switched them, basically. So This is now the intro clip, and I still have to make the finale clip. So yeah, I reach in and I release the wheel. Now before that, I reach in and I spin the fidget spinner. So because it's the introductory clip, there's some, decoration, sign reveal type stuff. I considered for a little bit having the wheel somehow reveal these signs at certain intervals as it's rolling down. But then I realized, the wheel is going fast enough. It's not as though you're waiting. You don't need other stuff happening to keep you interested and keep you engaged in watching. It goes fast enough that it doesn't feel like you're waiting. You don't need to have other stuff going on that's distracting. So, these are just static signs. They're just taped in place. Although what I will do in the main video, what you'll see is I'll reach in, give the little cyclone a spin, and then reach over and release the wheel. And then this will be just kind of spinning as the clip is going, which I think is kind of cool. So the title of the video is Chain Reactions X, or times, I guess, centrifugal force. And so I'm kind of using the cyclone as sort of the representation of the times of sort of just the X of just these things combining together. They're kind of cycloning together and meshing. I don't know. Anyway, that's the finale. That's the finale. I'm still used to calling it the finale clip. That's the introductory clip. On to the next one. Okay, it is day one of, for real this time, the last clip of centrifugal force tricks. So, the last time I made a trick, it was the centrifugal lock with the spinning spokes, and it released the ball inside. I thought that was going to be a pretty complex trick. It ended up being relatively simple, and so I needed to make another proper big finale main idea trick. So that's what this is. So this idea started from the idea, the sort of the concept that centrifugal force pushes things to the outside, and that can be used to sort things. So you can sort by size that way. So things are going to go outwards as far as they can go. So until they hit a barrier that they can't pass, right? So the idea is that it's sorting billiard balls and marbles by size. And so they all kind of randomly, it's an assortment, a random assortment, and they all start and they just get dumped in the middle. And then because of centrifugal force, this whole platform spins. And then they all go outwards as far as they can go. So the billiard balls stop against here, but the marbles are small enough to fit underneath, and they get stopped around the very outside rim. And they all kind of, because the whole wheel is spinning counterclockwise, they get stuck here and here, which is intentional, so they don't just keep spinning forever, so that then when the wheel stops, they want to continue in the direction they were moving, and then they make their way all the way around the ring again, and the billiard balls come out this way through this gap, and the marbles come out this way also through the same gap, but they're at a slightly different direction. So you notice the billiard balls come out sort of like this, and the marbles come out sort of like this. This isn't where the wheel actually stops. This is where the wheel starts. So this sort of ends closer to here. So it'll actually be quite nice because the marbles will come out sort of this way, and the billiard balls will come out sort of straight this way, which makes it really nice because it's right at the front of the table. You can have another sort of divider thing to catch them. So today I spent my time sort of building the ring itself, which actually went together quite smoothly. Despite some hang-ups, I put a ring that was too small for the billiard balls at first, and this ring is actually barely big enough because the challenge is making sure that the balls actually have enough force to make it around the ring once it stops. And the closer you are to the center, the smaller the force actually is. It's not really a problem for the marbles. They're far enough to the outside that when the wheel stops, they have enough momentum to make it all the way around. And they're quite small, but they're dense, so that's nice. Billiard balls, on the other hand, they're a little bit tougher to get to work. They definitely go a lot slower. But of course, that is good because then there's no chance of them bumping into each other as they cross paths here. The marbles make their way around much quicker. But anyway, I haven't actually showed it to you yet. So I'll do a demo, and we'll see how it goes. This is... Okay, I guess I should talk about this first. So this, part of the problem with this trick that I knew going into it was that getting this wheel to spin for long enough at the speed that I wanted, I would need to use a triple, potentially quadruple pulley. You may have heard me talk before about double pulleys, this sort of idea of instead of just having a weight hanging off the table through one pulley point on the table itself, you have a weight with a pulley on the weight and on the table, and then you loop the string back up to the table, and that helps. That allows you to pull for twice as long, although you need twice as much weight. So, and it basically helps you if you need to pull something for longer, then the weight can actually fall. And we talked about this with the roulette wheel back in Domino Master's machine, and I've used it a couple of times since, including a couple other times in this very video. But this is a different example entirely because it needs to spin for a long time, and it needs to pull for quite a long distance because it's wrapping around a pretty large circle under here as well. And I didn't think that a double pulley would cut it, and I was correct. A triple pulley barely cuts it. It just needs to rotate for so long, and it needs to go so fast that basically the amount that it needs to pull is a lot. It needs to pull a long way. And the only way to make that possible is by basically, I say gearing it down, which is not really accurate. These aren't gears, but it's the same idea, where you're trading off distance for force or force for distance. So the trade-off is that I need a lot more force, which is in the form of weight, but it's at the benefit of being able to pull for longer. So that's good. Now, what is this contraption? What is this weird thing? So the orange thing is a weird Connects piece, actually, from a set that I had as a kid. It was like that big inflatable, not inflatable, but like a air-powered ball tower thing. And the reason that I need to use this is because this needs to fall all the way to the ground. It's basically a way of making the weight completely horizontally distributed so that this pulley can go as far down as possible. If you think about how much space this would take if this was turned 90 degrees, I would have basically no room to drop anything. So I need a lot of weight, but I need it to take up basically no distance. So I'm distributing everything horizontally along, a long pole. So this is actually, you can tell, these are all 50-gram weights. So this is a lot of weight. But anyway, that's that. Let's do the demo. Let's see how this works. It might not work. I think the marbles will work, and I think the sorting part will work. The part that I'm still not certain about is whether the billiard balls will make their way around the inner ring and exit with enough speed. That's still in question. I haven't talked about this at all, but this is the mechanism for stopping the wheel at the right time. It's a shock absorber that slides in at the right moment. So yeah, let's do this. Let's take this off. And you can see that's starting to pull the wheel. So let's hold that. And then this stopper is going to release the balls. So they're also going to go all over the floor because I probably won't be able to catch them all. But here we go. Yeah, that was pretty miserable. Also, something happened where the wheel stopped in the wrong place. I don't know. Yeah, what was up? Why did that happen? This wasn't on the pulley. I don't know. Something that was a very weird test. So actually, a lot of things went wrong, and also for some reason. Oh. Okay, the tape was still, yeah, in the tube. That's why it got stuck there. I don't know what went wrong, but at least you get to see the sorting part. You can see how the billiard balls get stuck in the inner ring, the marbles go to the outer ring. Yeah, so I got a couple of things to work out, but I think overall we're looking good. Tomorrow I want to focus on making the things that are going to catch each of the sets of balls. So something to catch all the marbles, something to catch all the billiard balls, and then make the thing that actually dumps all the marbles and balls into this little tube. So I want to have a thing that actually mixes them together to make it random, which is it would be kind of weird if I didn't have that, because then it'd be like there's no point in having it be random. I don't know if that makes any sense. The point is that it sorts the balls, right? So you need something to mix them up first. Otherwise, what's the point? So, yeah, that's going to be what I make. Yeah, it's looking good. Day 2 of the centrifugal force sorting system trick. So where we left it off yesterday was that I had built the actual spinning wheel, I built the lead-in tube, I built the shock absorber, and what was left was the thing that mixes the balls together at the beginning and the sorting system at the end. Obviously what I've done today is I built the sorting system at the end. So this yellow track is for the marbles, this tricks track is for the billiard balls. And like I was saying yesterday, it's nice that they sort of get sorted separately because they come out at different angles, so you can kind of have two separate catching tracks that catch the balls perfectly as they enter or as they exit. So yeah, the problem with a trick like this that uses a lot of balls, and I say problem even though sometimes it's easier to solve than others, but something you have to keep in mind is it's a lot more elegant if everything is an AND gate. What's an AND gate? I think it's a computer science term, but it basically means that every input is required in order for a specific output to happen, which is as opposed to an OR gate, which is where only one input needs to happen in order for some output to happen. And what that means for a machine is when you have multiple balls that all do the same thing, in this case they all go around the center and then exit. Now, the two sizes do two different things, but each of the 4 billiard balls do the same thing, each of the 4 marbles do the same thing. So you can imagine a trick where one of the balls exits, and then the first one that exits just hits the next thing, and that continues the machine. But that's not very elegant, right? You want to make it so that all 4 need to exit properly for the trick to work. You need all of the balls to work for the machine to work. And that's an AND gate. You need all of the inputs for the output to happen. And so coming up with a way to do that is sometimes a bit of a challenge, but there are a couple classic ways to do it. The first is through a counting lever, which is just a device that counts the number of times a ball passes by. So you can see that 1, 2, 3, 4, and then finally this is going to knock off a weight after the 4th rotation. The other way that I've used twice here is that you have all the balls line up into a line, and then you have some kind of poker or lever or something push the last one out, right? So if all the ones before it didn't arrive, the line of balls wouldn't be long enough for the last one to be in the right place, is kind of the idea. So that's a simple way of making an AND gate, and I've done the same thing with the marbles. So let's actually show this. We'll run the marbles through first, because the marbles actually exit first in the actual machine. So if we just sort of give them a boost here and watch them go around. Perfect. Except the lever is not in the right place. It's not reset. So pretend that was like this. Right. And similarly here. This was not reset either. Okay. So now we do the billiard balls. This is going to be a little bit harder because it's tough to give them enough force. Sometimes I give them too much force, but oh, that's plenty. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I was a little too quick for this to really work properly. But they do exit a lot slower in the actual machine. So yeah, that's basically what I spent today on. One other thing that's quite interesting is that it'll be hard to tell in the final video, but like I was saying, Zane built his finale clip, like the actual finale, the sign revealer, before this. And his transition in is a black billiard ball, the 8-ball, on a tricks track, and it exits sort of in the middle of the table like this, which is why it's like that. And so I have to run this machine and get a successful take with the 8-ball being the ball that exits, right? Which is like, there's nothing in the machine that guarantees that to happen. All 4 balls are treated exactly the same way. We'll see if maybe there's a... so like what I want to do at the beginning to mix the balls is have like a billiard ball chain, and then like the same thing with the marbles, billiard ball chain or marble chain with the marbles, and then the whole board just kind of collapses and dumps the balls into the tube. So maybe it's possible that one of the 4 reset positions is more likely to end up over here, but I highly doubt it. So I'm just going to have to run this until I get a take where the 8-ball ends up in the last spot. So that's a little bit funny, but you won't be able to tell in the final video because it'll just look like you'll probably just guess that I built this first and then Zane built his clip and just used whichever ball happened to exit in my working take, which is not the case. But yeah, so like I was saying, the idea for the start to sort of scramble the balls is to have this board here. It's going to be right around here with the billiard ball chain and the marble chain. And then it's going to just whoop, drop, and it's going to collapse. And then all the balls will go into the tube. And then probably the action of the board collapsing will sort of release a gate or something to get the wheel started. Yeah. And then one thing I didn't mention before is that the transition in is a launch. Thanks, Zane. He had a ball launch out of his frame, and I need to have some ball. It's a white ping pong ball that kind of launches and lands into frame. So that's going to be what this area is going to be for. It's just to be like a catch basin or something. Something to soak up the impact and then sort of make the ball go down. And then that just leads up to here. Billiard ball chains collapse, wheel starts going, balls roll in, they sort, marbles exit, billiard balls exit, and gates, and then the 8-ball exits the clip. So this one, as anticipated, this is a properly complex clip for the final big machine of the video. And this is much more of a finale clip than the spinning lock thing that I made, which was much more fitting as an intro. So I'm glad I changed the plan, and yeah, this clip is coming along nicely. It's just big. It's just a big trick with a lot of moving parts, but yeah, it's coming along smoothly. All right, day 3 of the centrifugal sorting system. So day 1 was the middle wheel. Day 2 was the sorting system, the like exit paths, and then day 3 is the scrambling and all the extra connections. So this is the board that I was talking about. I was going to do some billiard ball chains and basically billiard ball chains, but with the marbles. So it's weighted in such a way that it will stay in place when all the balls are on it. But then once all the balls react, it changes weights ever so slightly. So when the marbles are on the holders like this, they're ever so slightly closer to the backside, but once they react, they fall towards the front. So it's basically the difference between this and this, or like the middle of the platform, or like the middle of the lane here versus resting at the bottom. And that causes the entire thing to tilt. I mean, I kind of don't believe it myself, but it does work, or at least it did when I made it. I've built a lot since, so who knows if something has changed, but probably not. Anyway, so I actually started by having a whole actual system that would release the balls into the tube here. And I had like the last marble go off of this side, hit a domino off, pull a lever, release the board to topple the whole thing and dump all of them in. But that just ended up being unnecessary, turns out. So yeah, just to cover the bases real quick, then after the board tilts, it releases this blue foosball. That goes down these two 90-degree Trix tracks, and as it gets to the turn, it hits the straw. That's what knocks this domino over. This is the connection to release this lever, and this is what releases the actual wheel to start rotating. This is a compression release. There's like a little half domino taped to the underside of the wheel, and this is just this just goes in such a way so that the domino gets stuck here, and then it gets pulled out, and then allows the wheel to rotate. And then the foosball continues to roll down, knocks off this domino, that pulls this lever, and that's what releases all the balls into the spinning wheel. So one thing that I kind of decided I wanted to do is have a moment where you actually see all of the balls in a scrambled position. Because I could have just had the wheel start to rotate, and then like some kind of time delay for like about a second, and then so like the wheel starts rotating, about a second later the board collapses, all the balls go in here, and then they immediately just roll down the track and into the tube, or into the 90-degree tube, and then onto the wheel. But I realized that doesn't really show the balls being scrambled. Like when they actually fall down into this tube and then they get caught behind the lever, there's actually a moment where the viewer can see like, oh, okay, the balls and the marbles are all mixed together. The billiard balls and the marbles are all mixed together. So there'd be like marble, marble, billiard ball, marble, billiard ball, marble, or something, whatever. And you get to like internalize, okay, the balls are scrambled now, and then once they get sorted again, it's a resolution to that moment. But if you don't ever internalize the fact that they ever get scrambled, it's a little bit it makes no sense. So I was glad I added that in. It's just useful to drive the point home, the whole concept. So that's most of what the actual that's most of the actual trick. The rest is the connection that I needed to make. Because Zane cursed me with dealing with a launch transition where I have to make the in transition to like be the catcher of the launch. It's really easy to make transitions out with a launch. You just have a launcher, launch a ball out of frame. Easy. But making the in transition of what catches the ball, a little bit tougher. So I had to figure that out. So the big challenge with that, especially when using a ping pong ball, is that it's very, very difficult to make any kind of catch basin that soaks up the impact of the ball and doesn't have the ball just bounce out immediately. And that is actually still a problem here. So what I did is I used a book, because paper is really good at soaking up the impact. And it's just a book. But I put this design on it for like a target, which kind of drives the point home that like the ball is supposed to come in here. So it just comes in and then rolls down and then into the track. So that's that. And then there's this pointer finger, and that's what actually hits the first ball on the tilting board. And this had to be done in such a way to have the perfect clearance so that it can still touch the ball when it's resting here, but the board can still make it past when it tilts, which wasn't too difficult, but it was something I had to keep in mind. So yeah, the entire thing is done at this point. It's actually quite late in the day today, so I don't think I'll be doing any testing tonight. I think I'll do that tomorrow, but hopefully it won't be too long and too arduous of a testing process. I actually think the thing that will take the longest is just getting getting lucky enough with the right order of the billiard balls, because like I said, it has to be the 8-ball that exits, and there's nothing inherent in the machine that is actually guaranteeing that. So I think I'll end up probably just getting a nice working take with the wrong ball exiting, and just like I'll have probably a couple of those before I actually get the right take. Hopefully it won't be too hard. But yeah, I guess final thoughts on this whole clip is that I'm really, really, really happy with how it turned out. I love this. I love how dense it is. I love how it looks overall. I like how there's big stuff in the back, and there's like a couple separate big visual items, because you've got the big board, you've got the spinning wheel, and then this thing, which actually is maybe a little too distracting now that I'm seeing it, but it's fine. It's whatever. I love the sorting system here, like both of these T shapes here, just like perfectly rotationally symmetric, like the shapes. Yeah, I just like how the actual spinning wheel, the centrifugal force, isn't centered to the actual clip. It's sort of like, well, actually, yeah, it kind of is, but it's kind of off to the side. Like it's a secondary component, because there's the scramble part and then there's the sorting part. So it's like it's a bigger trick. It's the biggest by size of all the tricks that I've built for this video. So it's like I said in the last update, definitely a suitable finale, and I'm really happy with it.